most extraordinary time in human history. Humanity's waking up. She's waking up to the feminine side of herself. She's waking up to the spiritual essence of self. And that's why I call us the generation of change. A year ago or so, I was down in South Africa doing an event, and after the event, a nice man came up to me. His name was Praise, and as Praise and I were speaking, Praise traveled from Tanzania down to South Africa to see our event, and afterwards we were talking, and I start asking him about himself, and he says, yeah, you know, Joe, I grew up in a normal village in the Serengeti, and Mount Kilimanjaro was our playground, and, you know, kind of the typical village, no shoes, no water, and we just kind of went on. And I heard the no water, and I just didn't think much of it. And the evening ended. It was just a beautiful conversation. The next morning, a gentleman says, who's a global traveler, he says, you know, anybody up for an adventure, meet me, and we'll go on an adventure. I said, well, Chris, I'll be there. 6 o'clock in the morning, we start out around South Africa. And I said to him, I said, so, Chris, what is this no water thing? And he said to me, he says, oh, no, Joe. You know, in the continent of Africa, there's over 400 million people that don't have running water. And I'm like, how can that be? At the time it was 2025, my head exploded. I said, how can that possibly be? And he says, oh no, Joe, it's a global epidemic. And I was like, I guess I was the only guy on the planet that didn't know. So we're out and about, and two young boys come walking up, beautiful young kids. And I said, Chris, what about them? And he said, oh, Joe, there's no way. There's no way those kids have water at home. No way. And I don't know what to say. My mind went blank at the time. And I'm looking around. People have cell phones. I see the cell phone towers, but no water. He goes just like this. I was like, oh, my gosh, satellites. Long trip back from South Africa, a one-way flight, about 18 hours in a flight. And I just knew I had to do something. So I get back and I get online and I start researching and I start understanding more about this concept of no water, and I'm going to do something about it. So I get online and I meet a couple of caregivers out of Uganda. And one gentleman, we're communicating back and forth through LinkedIn, and he says, Joe, I need $60. I was like, okay, what the heck, $60? He says, a little girl named Patricia's hurt her arm, and if she doesn't get treatment, she could lose it. I'm like, sure, I'll send it. Now, at this point, I had no idea how to do that. So I figure out, you know, I get on technology and I figure out, and eventually it's a click of a button, and 5 minutes later, all the way around the planet, my friend has his $60, which I thought, wow, technology. Technology makes a big difference now. And I'm starting to put the pieces together on why we are truly the generation of change. And so he gets the money, and lo and behold, within 2 hours, I get a video of him and 25 orphans in this Ugandan orphanage saying thank you to Mr. Joe for the money. And I'm like, oh my gosh, technology has really made this world a much smaller place. And as I start thinking about it more and more, I start researching more and more, and I start realizing this whole money transfer concept and how simple that was. I had no idea. So I did a little bit of research, and do you know, in our global economy today, there's more money that moves through our global economy today in one day than used to exist 100 years ago. So we live in the most abundant, the most prosperous, the most advanced technology that's ever been. So the pieces of that puzzle just keep coming together for me. Then I do some more research, and I'm started a nonprofit, and we're starting to help these caregivers on ground. And I'm learning more and more and more. And what I learned is, over the past 10, 20, 30 years, there are tens of thousands of people that were guided by a power much greater than themselves to visit places around the globe, and they are boots on the ground, hands touching people. Truly, in this day and age, there's not a person in need that the globe doesn't know about. 99.9% of every need, of every poorer person, everybody in limited means, is known about now because of these caregivers. And I'm thinking, so again, the pieces of the puzzle just keep coming together, why we are truly the generation of change. And then it hit me. We are literally experiencing something in human history that's never happened before. And I call it Generation Lap. Our kids are coming in smarter, wiser, more connected, more available, more guided by their divine self than ever before. We witnessed it up here today. These young people are absolutely stunning. And I have one myself, my youngest son, modern day Mozart. They are gifted in a way that have never been gifted before. And I had somebody ask me, I said, so are they going to change the world, Joe? Are they going to heal? I said, no, they're next generation. The generation that's going to do it now, because the only thing missing is money. It's called the next generation of Generation Lap, is that there's a whole class of entrepreneurial personalities out there now. People that are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, that have been moving and having success into their worlds and pursuing gratitude. That's what humanity does. You go out, you produce. The more you produce, the more grateful you are. The more grateful you are, the more you produce. And that cycle is it's a wonderful thing. And there are more millionaires being created today in a year than used to exist not long ago. So again, there's more money. But the important part about that is that there's more people looking for their next thing. The challenge with most is that they've been successful in entrepreneurial adventure or whatever it is, and they're letting their humanity guide them, and they're still missing it. Something's still missing. We had several people say it up here today. And really what's happening, because humanity's waking up, you're waking up, you're creating that sense of divinity within yourself. I call it the we. We as a humanity are moving from a me mindset to a we consciousness. And the we consciousness is humanity, divinity, and an inner sense of self. And from that position of the we, more and more people are moving forward and connecting into that higher side of themselves. Moving from a sense of gratitude to a sense of grace. Grace is the thing that is accomplished when humanity puts it out there. You do something wonderful, you receive back, you feel grateful. Grace, though, is what happens when your divinity is in charge, when you move into that higher sense of yourself. Grace happens when you're in that pursuit of giving back. Not for any need, not for any want, except for the sake of giving back, and that is called grace. My little friend Patricia, I did a live stream 3 or 4 months later. For $50, this little girl saved her arm. Now, the $50 to me meant almost nothing. The $50 to them meant everything. They were very grateful for it. That's been a year. The experience I had by helping this little girl a year later is still grace. Through my whole experience, I met a gentleman, and how divinity truly, because more and more of us are being divinely guided, whether you know it or not, you are. I met a gentleman out of Dubai. I was introduced to a caregiver from a gentleman out of Australia. Australia introduces me to somebody in Uganda. A gentleman in India introduces me to a guy in Dubai. Now, through technology, we're all talking, right? So, my guys from in Dubai had a spiritual experience 10 years ago where he committed to the power greater than himself, that as he goes back and builds a big business again, he's going to give 20% of the proceeds, not the profits, 20% of the proceeds back to humanity. And lo and behold, that happened. So here I am, I introduced the people from Dubai to my caregivers in Uganda. Didn't hear anything for 3 or 4 months. A month ago, I get a picture. I'm like, what the heck? That's my guy, Alan, from Uganda, the caregiver, and 5 gentlemen and his wife from Dubai. And they were there. They visit. Their hands on the ground. Why? Because he was guided by a divine sense of himself to give back. Because of that, literally, this community, they're in tremendous amount of gratitude, naturally. 85 kids have beds who didn't know what a bed was. They have nets because malaria kills kids over there every day. They literally, I'm talking to them about a well system, and the guy's like, no, Joe, slow down, Joe. We're building a borehole, he calls it. It's a well. A community of 100 people have a well now. A school on that same property. Why? Because this gentleman was guided by his divine sense of self. And how does it all connect together? Here's a community that's living in a struggling humanity. But they were super grateful. I see a picture, both sides. The community of gratitude and the caregivers over here with grace. And the money that it made he had to spend, it barely moved a decimal point. He's got $5 million a year to spend because his business is super successful. This guy is like looking for people that he can help around the globe. And that's why we're the generation of change. Everything is different now than ever before. We've got technology that brings the globe closer than ever before. There's more money moving through the economy than ever before. There are caregivers that have been guided by their power greater than themselves, that are on the ground, out, living their passion. The only thing left they need is money. And now we have a whole world of people. I came up with the idea, 1% one time. 1% one time. If we just get the world to move more into sensing of their grace instead of gratitude, it gives them a sense of accomplishment to move forward. That 1% one time, together we heal the world. Together we're making a difference. Together we're literally able to turn the world over and make it a different place because humanity's waking up. And as we, the people here, all of you are on the forefront of that awareness. Whether you understand it or not, you're not guided to a place like this if you're not on the forefront of an awareness that's happening around the globe. And collectively, we're changing the world. Collectively, we're creating relationships that make a difference. And collectively, we're healing humanity, one smile at a time. Thank you for being here.